Sophie Gardner felt the weight of the world on her shoulders as she made her way to the bus stop, each step a reminder of her fatigue. 3 morning classes, followed by an 8-hour shift at Brood Awakening. The local coffee shop that contributed to her half of the rent had left her feeling utterly exhausted. The November wind pierced her thin blue hoodie, a stark reminder that winter was on the horizon, and she remained unable to afford a proper coat. The number 42 bus arrived precisely on schedule. Sophie stepped onto the bus, presented her monthly pass to the driver, a surly middle-aged man with a constant frown, and settled into a seat towards the rear. She leaned her forehead against the cool window, observing the city lights meld into one another as fatigue seeped further into her being. "Hold on." A voice, deep and resonant, rang out just as the doors started to shut. The driver hesitantly opened the doors, and a young man in his early 20s leaped onto the vehicle, a hint of breathlessness in his demeanor. He donned jeans and a modest gray sweater that, in its simplicity, exuded an air of understated luxury. His tousled dark hair caught the wind, and an air of confidence in his stance drew the attention of several passengers. "That'll be $350, the driver stated in a monotone voice. The young man anxiously patted his pockets, a sense of dread creeping in. "I apologize, but I believe I may have left my wallet in my other—" He halted mid-sentence, a flush of embarrassment washing over his face. "No cash, no trip," the driver declared, gesturing toward the exit. "I have a timeline to adhere to." Sophie observed the interaction, identifying that expression of shame. Without a moment's hesitation, she rose and moved ahead, her hand searching through her pocket for the scattered coins she had been given as a gratuity earlier. "Here," she remarked, reaching out with $3.25 in her palm. The young man turned, surprise flickering in his hazel eyes. For a brief instant, he appeared ready to decline, yet then he nodded with appreciation. "I appreciate it, and I'll find a way to repay you." Sophie offered a weary smile, reassuringly saying, "Don't worry about it," before settling back into her seat. The young man discovered a place a few rows in front, stealing occasional glances back at her. Sophie was preoccupied, her mind drifting towards the upcoming exam and the nagging worry of whether her mum had taken her medication. Unbeknownst to Sophie, she had just played a pivotal role in the life of Ethan Carter, heir to the illustrious Carter Grand Hotels, a prestigious chain that graced 3 continents. The very Ethan whose visage sporadically graced the pages of business publications alongside bold headlines regarding the hotel empire he was destined to inherit. He glanced back once more at the girl in the blue hoodie, her eyes now shut, her expression serene despite the evident fatigue, and sensed something new, a bond that transcended his surname or his family's affluence. As the bus rolled through the bustling city streets, 2 worlds collided for an instant, oblivious to the fact that this fleeting moment would alter the course of their lives forever. Sophie's fingers danced over the espresso machine, showcasing a blend of skill and enthusiasm. Steaming milk, grinding beans, and pouring flawless Rosetta patterns had become instinctual after 2 years at Brood Awakening. The morning hustle was alive and vibrant, with a queue of eager patrons craving their caffeine fix extending all the way to the entrance. "Grande caramel latte with almond milk," she announced, sliding the cup across the counter while keeping her gaze fixed elsewhere. "Thank you," a recognizable voice responded. Sophie looked up and came to a standstill. Before her stood the young man from the bus, the one she had assisted the day before. In the light of day, she observed nuances she had overlooked in the shadowy bus ambience. A chiseled jawline, keen eyes, and an effortless elegance in his attire that spoke of luxury. "It's you," she exclaimed, astonishment clear in her tone. He grinned. "I assured you that I would return the money. For $3.50, it hardly seemed worth the journey. Perhaps I desired excellent coffee as well," he responded, a mischievous sparkle in his gaze. "Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Ethan." Sophie responded instinctively, her coworker Lisa nudging her with urgency. "6 people are waiting on drinks," Lisa hissed. "Apologies for that." Sophie glanced over her shoulder at Ethan. "I must." Certainly, he remarked, placing a $5 bill into the tip jar. Thank you once more, Sophie. She observed him select a table by the window, retrieving a book instead of a phone, which she found to be surprisingly refreshing. During her shift, she noticed him stealing glances, their eyes locking for a fleeting moment before they both averted their gaze. As the hustle and bustle subsided, Sophie took a cloth and started to clean the tables around her. As she drew near to Ethan's table, she spoke. Is forgetting your wallet something you often do? He chuckled softly, shutting his book with a satisfied smile. Typically not. Yesterday unfolded in a way that was both unexpected and intriguing. Strange. In what way? Let's just say I'm exploring new avenues in my life. Sophie arched an eyebrow. Enigmatic. Not on purpose. His expression became serious. I returned because... He paused, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. This may seem unusual, but you are the first individual to show me kindness without anticipations. It was merely the cost of a bus ticket, Sophie remarked, bewildered by his fervor. Nonetheless, I wish to express my gratitude in a fitting manner. How about grabbing a coffee sometime when you're free from work? Sophie observed him closely, attempting to decipher his motives. He held back a truth, yet the sincerity in his eyes spoke volumes. I have no familiarity with you at all. Isn't that the essence of coffee? To understand someone better. Just as she was about to respond, her manager's voice rang out from behind the counter. Sophie, time to get back to work. Ethan replied swiftly, I'm here most mornings. Consider it carefully. Sophie gave a reluctant nod before diving back into her tasks. As the hours passed, her gaze drifted to the place he once occupied, now taken by a student lost in their own world, headphones firmly in place. She chided herself for feeling let down when he failed to arrive the next day, yet when he walked in the next morning, effortlessly ordering a black coffee and inquiring about her day, a warm sensation ignited within her chest, a feeling she hadn't felt in ages. What started as mere chance was swiftly evolving into a pattern, yet Sophie remained unaware of the intricate complexities that lay ahead in that pattern. Sophie stirred her latte thoughtfully and said, So let me get this straight. You've made the bold choice to leave your corporate job and embark on a new journey. They gathered for their 5th coffee meetup in just 2 weeks, this time following the end of her shift. Ethan found himself seated opposite her at a quaint table tucked away in the back corner of Brood Awakening. His expression was pensive. He responded with something along those lines. The family enterprise was not... It wasn't the person I aspired to become, and Sophie nodded, grasping the depth of his feelings more than he understood. My father was similar, envisioning an entire future mapped out for me. University, legal education becoming part of his practice. When I decided to pursue art history instead, he ceased all financial support. She shrugged, attempting to downplay the pain she felt. It's been 3 years since I last spoke to him. Ethan inclined his body, drawing closer. That's tough. Is that the reason you put in so many hours here? That and assisting my mother with the rent. She is facing health challenges. Sophie astonished herself with her openness. There was something about Ethan that invited vulnerability. Well, let's move on from my melancholy past. What are you currently working on in your professional life? Ethan adjusted his position in the chair. Independent consulting, rather uneventful. Sophie teased. Mr. Mysterious strikes again. Your history remains unspoken. It pales in comparison to the excitement of discussing your enthusiasm for Renaissance art. Sophie rolled her eyes, yet a smile crept onto her face. Seamless deviation. The coffee shop stood almost deserted at this hour. As dusk enveloped the city, the streetlights began to flicker to life. Sophie ought to have been making her way home. She needed to complete her reading for tomorrow's class, yet she felt a strong hesitation to bring their conversation to a close. May I pose a question to you? Ethan spoke, his voice taking on a weighty tone. It varies based on the inquiry. What is it that you truly desire from life? Sophie blinked, taken aback by the bluntness. I aspire to complete my degree. One day, I hope to work at a museum, perhaps even curate my own exhibition, and finally free myself from the constant worry about finances. That sounds delightful. Is that all there is? Are there no aspirations for globe-trotting or luxurious estates? She chuckled. Those things cost money I don't have. I have a pragmatic approach. However, if finances were not a concern, I would whisk my mom away to Italy. She had always dreamed of experiencing Florence. Sophie inclined her head thoughtfully. It's your moment now. What is it that you desire, Ethan, whatever your surname may be? He smiled, yet there was an enigmatic depth in his eyes that eluded her understanding. Liberty, to simply embrace my true self, free from the expectations of others. And who is the true version of yourself? Sophie inquired gently. I'm in the process of unraveling that mystery. Their eyes locked in a silent exchange. Being with you brings out a part of me that I haven't felt in ages. The revelation lingered in the air, sincere and unfiltered. Sophie experienced a stirring in her chest, a mix of exhilaration and fear coursing through her veins. I should go, she said at last, collecting her belongings. There's an early class scheduled for tomorrow. Ethan nodded, escorting her to the door. Shall we meet at the same time next week? Perhaps sooner, Sophie responded, acting on impulse before doubt could creep in. A student exhibition is taking place at my college this Friday night. It's not extravagant, yet, Ethan replied without hesitation. I'd love to go. As they said their goodbyes outside, Sophie felt a stirring within her. For the first time in years, she was allowing someone new to step into her meticulously crafted reality. Though she questioned the wisdom of her choice, there was an undeniable allure in Ethan that beckoned her to embrace the uncertainty. What she failed to notice was the expression on Ethan's face once she departed. The turmoil and remorse etched on his face as he retrieved a phone that far exceeded the value of his modest attire. The university gallery thrummed with lively chatter as students and faculty wandered through, scrutinizing the artwork showcased on immaculate white walls. Sophie lingered next to a collection of photographs. It wasn't her own creations, but rather those of a friend who had requested her assistance in clarifying them for guests. He delves into urban decay as a symbol of neglected communities, she articulated to an elderly professor, who responded with courteous intrigue. Her gaze wandered repeatedly to the entrance. Ethan was 20 minutes late, and Sophie started to wonder if he would actually arrive. She glanced at her phone, finding it devoid of messages. Apologies for my tardiness, a voice remarked from behind her. Sophie glanced back to see Ethan, a bit breathless, his hair tousled by the wind. Parking eluded me. You took the wheel? Sophie inquired, taken aback. I was under the impression you took the bus. Ethan quickly explained that he had borrowed a friend's car. This exhibition held significant importance for you. With a gentle smile, Sophie allowed her doubts to dissolve. It's wonderful to see you here. Allow me to guide you through this space. As they strolled through the gallery, Sophie observed several details that seemed a bit off. Ethan's modest watch, which he kept attempting to conceal beneath his sleeve, bore an uncanny resemblance to the high-end brand she had encountered in glossy magazine advertisements. His understanding of art was unexpectedly refined for someone who professed to have a typical business background. When he received a call, he withdrew to converse in low tones, returning with attention evident in his eyes. Is everything all right? Sophie inquired. Only focus on the task at hand, he murmured. I apologize for that. As they stood before a captivating abstract painting, Sophie mustered her courage. Ethan, may I pose a question to you? Absolutely. Who are you at your core? At times, it seems as though you're concealing something. Ethan tensed up. Could you clarify what you mean? Sophie made a sweeping motion with her hand. The watch you have on is worth more than what I pay for a whole semester of classes. Your knowledge of 16th century Italian masters is impressive, especially for someone who has only taken one art history class in college. Yet, whenever I inquire about your family or your living situation, you seem to divert the conversation elsewhere. I mentioned that I have experience in the corporate world. Which company? Sophie urged. Ethan let out a weary sigh, his fingers raking through his hair. It's quite intricate, Sophie. He hesitated, Then, with a subtle determination, slipped the watch off his wrist. It belonged to my grandfather, a cherished piece passed down through the generations. Sophie yearned to trust him. The recent weeks spent with Ethan had illuminated her otherwise tiring existence. In their shared moments, discussing literature or engaging in spirited debates about various artistic movements, she experienced a profound sense of understanding that was entirely new to her. Ethan spoke softly. "I like you, Sophie. Isn't that what truly counts?" A part of her yearned to delve deeper, to extract the complete truth. Yet the fragility reflected in his gaze caused her to hesitate. "Just be honest with me, all right? I've experienced too many departures in my life. I can't bear any more letdowns." Ethan extended his hand towards hers, enveloping it softly in a tender grip. "I'm here to stay." As they wandered through the gallery, Sophie reminded herself to find satisfaction in what Ethan chose to reveal. Still, she couldn't dispel the sense that she was merely witnessing a meticulously crafted facade, a canvas with crucial sections intentionally left empty. What she failed to see was how swiftly those empty gaps would be completed, regardless of Ethan's desires. Sophie's shift wrapped up at 10 p.m., later than her typical schedule because a colleague had called in sick. The coffee shop lay in serene stillness as she polished the final tables, moonlight cascading through the windows. To her surprise, Ethan remained throughout the evening, sipping on a succession of coffees while engrossed in his laptop. "You didn't have to wait," she said, untying her apron. "I had the desire to." Ethan shut down his laptop. "Moreover, the hour is quite advanced. I figured I could accompany you to the bus stop." The night air outside was imbued with a refreshing autumn chill. Sophie wrapped her hoodie snugly around her as they strolled together, their shoulders gently grazing against each other from time to time. "Do you know what I came to understand today?" Ethan inquired, shattering the serene quietude. "What is that?" "It has been precisely 1 month since you rescued me on the bus." Sophie chuckled softly. "Rescued you?" "Cost $3.50. Ethan stated with gravity that it was more than that. "That day I was venturing into uncharted territory, breaking free from," he paused, "from the weight of expectations. You were the first person who didn't look at me and perceive." "Perceive what?" Sophie urged as he fell silent. Ethan gave a slight shake of his head. "It holds no significance. What truly counts is that encountering you transformed my perspective." They paused at the bus shelter, which stood deserted save for their presence. Sophie pivoted to confront him, examining his features illuminated by the streetlight's glow. "Oh, do you know what I believe?" she remarked. "It seems our paths crossed at the perfect moment for both of us." Ethan arched an eyebrow. "Are you getting all philosophical on me, art girl?" "Perhaps." Sophie beamed with delight. "My mother often remarks that everything happens for a reason in the cosmos." "So, what are your mom's thoughts about me?" Ethan inquired, moving nearer. "She finds it rather curious that you haven't joined us for dinner yet. Could that be an invitation?" Sophie paused, uncertainty flickering in her mind. Her apartment was modest, far from the grand spaces she envisioned Ethan might be accustomed to, regardless of his true origins. "Perhaps. If you can overlook our eclectic collection of plates and the elevator's tendency to malfunction twice a week, we'd appreciate it." "I would never," Ethan said softly. The atmosphere shifted unexpectedly, crackling with an unspoken tension that neither had recognized until this moment. Sophie felt a heightened awareness of their proximity, noticing Ethan's gaze flicker momentarily to her lips. "Sophie," he murmured, "I have longed to—" She interrupted him before he could complete his thought. Rising slightly on her toes, Sophie pressed her lips to his, a soft inquiry that Ethan responded to by drawing her nearer, one hand cradling her face with surprising gentleness. As they separated, Sophie experienced a dizzying sensation, her heart pounding fiercely within her chest. "I've been wanting to do that for weeks," Ethan admitted, his forehead gently resting against hers. Sophie beamed with delight. "Why did it take you so much time?" In the distance, the headlights of the oncoming bus sliced through the night, illuminating the shadows around. Sophie hesitated, taking a step back with a hint of reluctance. She inquired, Shall I see you tomorrow? Ethan gave a slight nod. Absolutely. As the bus transported her back, Sophie brushed her lips, reliving the moment in her thoughts. After years of merely existing, she finally permitted herself to dream of something beyond the daily struggle for survival. Whatever mysteries Ethan held, whatever challenges awaited, tonight had felt genuine. A fresh start instead of yet another impasse. What she failed to notice was Ethan lingering at the bus stop, his face a canvas of conflicting emotions, caught between happiness and an escalating sense of remorse. Ethan walked back and forth in his hotel suite, phone held tightly to his ear. As the floor-to-ceiling windows showcased a sweeping view of the city, lights shimmering like scattered stars in the dark sky. 3 weeks had gone by since his initial kiss with Sophie, and with each passing day, the burden of his dishonesty became increasingly oppressive. I require additional time, Dad, he stated, the strain clear in his tone. The project in Singapore can hold off for now. In this line of work, there's no room for delay. Richard Carter's terse voice revealed his growing frustration. For almost 2 months, you've been on a journey of self-discovery, and the board is starting to inquire. Ethan shot back, I'm not finding myself. I'm discovering the realities of everyday life. His father's laughter was chilling. Embracing hardship won't enhance your skills as a CEO, my boy. It will only weaken your resolve. Ethan stole a quick look at his watch, the very one that had caught Sophie's attention. In 30 minutes, he was set to rendezvous with her for dinner at her apartment. He had ultimately consented to meet her mother. I have to go, he said suddenly. This is concerning that girl, isn't it? Richard's voice became more pointed. The barista my investigator referred to? Ethan's fingers clenched around his phone. You had me under surveillance? I safeguard my assets. You are the inevitable future of Carter Hotels, whether you embrace it or not. Once the call concluded, Ethan gazed at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. Whom did he think he could deceive? Each morning, he exited the lavish suite, donned ordinary attire in a public restroom, and assumed an identity that was not his own, all to share moments with a woman who cherished truth above all else. Sophie's voice resonated in his thoughts. Simply be honest with me. Yet he had. Each day, in every dialogue, the aroma of freshly baked lasagna wafted through the cozy confines of Sophie's apartment. Maria, her mother, navigated the kitchen with a deliberate pace, the sound of her cane echoing softly against the linoleum floor. Maria noted the time, glancing at the old clock on the wall, realizing he was late. Sophie rearranged the eclectic array of plates on their quaint dining table. Just 10 minutes, Mom. He will arrive shortly. A knock echoed at the door, as if drawn forth by her unwavering confidence. Sophie adjusted the fabric of her dress with care. A treasure from the thrift store, she had devoted countless hours to altering it, and now she paused to take a deep breath before unveiling it. Ethan lingered in the hallway, gripping a bouquet of lilies and a bottle of wine that Sophie guessed was worth more than her entire weekly grocery budget. Apologies for my tardiness, he remarked, his gaze expressing deeper regret than his statement. The work call extended beyond the expected duration. Sophie received the flowers, her face lighting up with a smile. Step inside. My mother has been eagerly looking forward to meeting you. The evening unfolded beautifully, as Maria recounted amusingly awkward tales from Sophie's younger days, while Ethan captivated them both with his sincere curiosity and thoughtful inquiries about Maria's life prior to her illness. So, Ethan, Maria remarked as they wrapped up dessert, Sophie mentioned that you're in consulting. What type specifically? Ethan paused, a wave of anxiety washing over him as the scrutiny of his constructed past loomed closer. Primarily focused on hotel management. That sounds intriguing, Maria replied with a nod. My late husband often remarked that a person's true character is revealed in their treatment of those who serve them. I couldn't agree more, Ethan said, locking eyes with Sophie from across the table. As Sophie guided him to the door, she leaned in and whispered, She loves you. I can perceive. Ethan drew her near, pressing his face into her hair. Sophie, I have something important to share with you. What is it exactly? She inquired, withdrawing slightly to examine his troubled demeanor. The words choked in his throat. How could he convey that he was more than just an average person? That his family held the reins of a billion-dollar empire? That soon he would have to go back to a world where individuals like Sophie went unnoticed? Nothing, he finally replied. I'm truly grateful for this evening. As he pressed his lips to hers in a farewell, Ethan felt the weight of time slipping away. The truth was inevitable, destined to reveal itself eventually. The hustle and bustle of Wednesday afternoon at Brood Awakening had finally begun to ease. Sophie polished the espresso machine, a soft melody escaping her lips as she worked. The last few weeks with Ethan felt straight out of a film. Whispers in the dark, leisurely strolls beneath the trees, fleeting moments of affection amidst the hustle. For the first time, her life seemed harmonious, even with her busy agenda. Could I please have a cappuccino? A voice inquired. Sophie glanced upward to find a woman in her 30s, her sharp eyes scanning the surroundings, a press badge dangling from her neck. Sophie responded promptly, beginning to prepare the drink. The bell above the door chimed, and Ethan stepped inside, a smile spreading across his face as he caught sight of Sophie. He hardly had a moment to acknowledge the recognizable figure of a businessman from his father's company waiting in line. Ethan. The man narrowed his eyes, then retrieved his phone. Absolutely not. Ethan tensed, a chill sweeping through him. A handful of patrons glanced over. You seem different, the man remarked, eyeing Ethan's tattered jeans and the coffee stains on his sweater. Just as Ethan was about to respond, a woman's voice pierced the silence of the room. Who is Ethan Carter? The writer stood near the counter, already pulling out her phone. What brings you to this place? Sophie stood still, the name hitting her like a bolt of lightning. Carter, the name behind Carter Grand Hotels, the opulent chain whose billboards towered over the skyline. Ethan's expression crumbled. Melissa, please refrain from... The reporter captured numerous images before Ethan had a chance to intervene. Is your father aware that you're spending your time in coffee shops? Is this merely a tactic for attention? Sophie sensed the room swaying, the cappuccino spilling over, steaming milk cascading across the counter. Sophie, allow me to clarify. Ethan began to approach her. Ethan Carter, Sophie echoed, her voice empty. Is it like the air in the hotel? The writer glanced between them, her eyes widening with comprehension. Oh, this is quite amusing, she turned to Sophie. Excuse me, do you happen to work here? For how long have you been acquainted with him? She doesn't belong in this, Ethan snapped. Step back and give her some space. Yet, the harm had already been inflicted. The writer was already tapping away on her phone, a victorious grin dancing across her face. Ethan Carter was seen at a nearby coffee shop. New life or merely a game? She whispered as she penned her thoughts. This is bound to spread like wildfire in no time. Sophie moved with a certain detachment, methodically wiping up the spilled milk, her thoughts swirling through every exchange, every shared moment with Ethan, reinterpreting them all in this heart-wrenching light. Sophie, I beg you, Ethan implored, extending his hand over the counter. Indeed, it is true. Lisa stood nearby, arms crossed and eyes narrowed. Sophie turned sharply. You're that Ethan Carter. You were aware. No, Lisa said, shaking her head. However, it has become clear now. Your generosity with tips has always been quite excessive. And that watch, I initially believed it was a counterfeit, but now... She let out a derisive laugh, her expression twisted in distaste. Ethan gulped, a heavy sense of remorse weighing down in his gut. Sophie took a step back, her voice echoing emptiness. Were you planning to share this with me at any point? Absolutely. I was searching for the perfect moment. The perfect moment was before I succumbed to my feelings for you. Sophie responded, her voice trembling. Not once everyone else has already come to that conclusion. Lisa emerged from the back room, acutely aware of the palpable tension in the air. Is everything all right, Soph? Very well, Sophie succeeded. I'm stepping away for a moment. In silence, she released her apron and made her way to the staff room, gently shutting the door as she entered. It was only at that moment that she permitted the tears to stream down her cheeks. Sophie hurriedly made her way out of the coffee shop, her pace quickening as she called out, "Leave me alone, Ethan," before slipping through the back exit. Though her shift was over, the sting of humiliation lingered vividly. Ethan trailed behind her into the alley, filled with urgency. "Sophie, I kindly ask for just 5 minutes of your time." She spun around, her eyes ablaze. "Just 5 minutes? You had 2 months to be honest with me. For 2 months, you've observed me tallying tips and fretting over my mother's medical expenses while you—" Her voice faltered. "What are you doing? Performed poorly for enjoyment?" Ethan maintained that it wasn't the case. "When we crossed paths on that bus, I was seeking to embrace life free from the weight of the Carter name. For once, I longed for someone to truly recognize the essence of who I am. Yet it wasn't solely you, was it?" Sophie's voice fell to a dangerously low whisper. "It was a persona you crafted, the earnest consultant, the modest individual piecing his life back together." She let out a harsh, mirthless laugh. "I can't believe I let that happen. Everything I shared with you about myself, my thoughts, my feelings, my desires for life was genuine, except for the bit about you being the heir to a billion-dollar empire." Sophie gently shook her head, a subtle gesture that spoke volumes. "That's not just a small detail, Ethan. That's the essence of your entire existence." Passers-by strolled along the main street, a few casting intrigued looks at the intensity of their discussion. Sophie realized she was drawing attention and took a deep breath, striving to regain her composure. "Are you aware of what the most frustrating aspect is?" she inquired softly. "My trust was in you. I allowed you to meet my mother. I shared with you secrets I've kept hidden from everyone else." She fought back the tears that threatened to spill, blinking them away with determination. "All that time you were deceiving me right to my face." Ethan extended his hand toward her, but Sophie recoiled, creating distance between them. "Sophie, I intended to share this with you. I truly swear. I was uncertain about how to proceed without the risk of losing you. Seems you've managed to find a way to let me slip away." She retrieved her phone from her pocket, presenting the screen to him. The article had gone viral, racking up thousands of shares, featuring candid shots of Ethan at the coffee shop and swirling rumors about his clandestine affair with the barista. "By tomorrow all will be aware, my colleagues, my peers." Sophie's voice trembled. "Did it have value? Your small endeavor to fit in?" Ethan's expression twisted in distress. "You were never involved in a trial. The emotions I have for you are genuine." "I have no idea who you are," Sophie whispered. "I would appreciate it if you refrained from reaching out to me in the future." Without pausing for his reply, she pivoted and strode away, each footfall taking her further from the future she had naively started to envision. Behind her, Ethan stood frozen, his gaze fixed on the one true bond he had ever experienced fading away into the distance. Ethan stood on the marble balcony of the Carter family estate, gazing at the meticulously kept gardens below, though his mind was elsewhere, lost in thought. 3 days had slipped by since Sophie turned and left. 3 days of silence, with texts left unanswered and calls that went directly to voicemail. The void he encountered was unlike anything he had ever known. "I warned you it wouldn't work," Richard Carter's voice echoed from behind him. Ethan's father walked over with purposeful strides, a glass of scotch clutched in his hand. Ethan feigned indifference, choosing not to look back. "I wasn't engaging in any sort of game." "No," Richard arched an eyebrow. "What would you say about neglecting your duties to serve coffee and pursue a girl earning minimum wage?" "Her name is Sophie," Ethan said through clenched teeth. "And I wasn't abandoning anything. I was attempting to grasp what our company truly signifies to real individuals." Richard chuckled, the sound lacking any warmth. "Genuine individuals? In contrast to what? Incredible individuals such as ourselves? You're aware of what I'm getting at. I understand you've brought shame upon this family." Richard set his untouched drink on the balcony railing. "The board meeting is scheduled for tomorrow. The expansion in Singapore won't pause for you to figure out your identity." Ethan took a deep breath, striving to maintain his composure. "I won't be returning, Dad. Richard placed his glass down with a decisive clink. Oh, you believe you're not returning, but you will. You're still tied to the company, Ethan, unless you're prepared for a legal showdown over every penny you've invested in your little venture. Ethan felt a knot form in his stomach. That's not something you would consider. Challenge accepted. Richard's voice carried an icy detachment. You are either my child, or simply another challenge I must address. Did you honestly believe you could simply exist like everyone else? Your destiny is to rise to greatness, Ethan. Embracing that truth sooner will lead to greater clarity. Ethan murmured to himself, Sophie saw me. It's not about the Carter name or the wealth. It's simply about who I am. And now she's witnessed everything and desires no connection with you. Richard remarked harshly. That's the truth, my friend. Individuals tend to either seek your wealth or harbor feelings of bitterness towards you for possessing it. There is no middle ground. The words struck with the force of a punch. Ethan glanced back at the scenery, unable to endure the contented expression on his father's face. The helicopter departs for the board meeting at 9 a.m. Richard pressed on, already moving away. I anticipate your presence, suitably attired and ready to assume your rightful position. As the sound of his father's footsteps disappeared, Ethan took out his phone for one final glance. His thumb lingered above Sophie's contact details. What could he possibly express that would alter the situation at this point? In a moment of profound insight, Ethan understood that he needed to carve out his own journey, one that was free from the weight of his father's aspirations and Sophie's dismissal. Sophie's pencil danced across the page with fierce, rapid movements. The library exuded a serene atmosphere, punctuated only by the gentle rustle of pages and the faint click of keyboards. 3 weeks had gone by since the revelation about Ethan shattered her world, and she had immersed herself in her studies with a fierce resolve. That doesn't resemble Renaissance art, whispered Jen, her classmate. As Sophie leaned in to examine her sketchbook, her eyes fell upon the drawing dark, chaotic lines converging to create a cityscape that mirrored her tumultuous emotions more than any lesson she had ever learned. Simply organizing my thoughts. Have you come across this? Jen pushed her phone away from her, letting it glide across the table's surface. A business news article appeared on the screen. Carter Air steps down from the family enterprise, stunning the board and investors. Sophie's heart raced, defying her control. The piece presented a polished image of Ethan in a suit, appearing entirely different from the person she remembered. Isn't that the guy from your coffee shop? Yen inquired. The individual who, indeed, Sophie interrupted her, shoving the phone aside. I truly prefer not to discuss it. Later that evening, following her shift at Brood Awakening, Sophie assisted her mother in getting dinner ready. The cozy apartment exuded a sense of security, a sanctuary far removed from towering skyscrapers and the weighty choices of the affluent. Maria stirred the pot of soup on the stove and remarked, You're quiet tonight. Sophie gave a nonchalant shrug. A day filled with activity. Could it be the boy, Ethan? Sophie almost let the plate slip from her grasp. Mother, I implore you. Maria pressed on, unwavering, reminding you that your father wasn't always the person you think of today. Upon our first encounter, he exuded kindness and a sense of idealism. Wealth transformed him, rather than the reverse. Sophie insisted this wasn't about Dad, even though she couldn't ignore the similarity. Ethan deceived me for months. He observed my efforts to get by, while he likely returned to a luxurious penthouse each evening. Perhaps, Maria suggested softly, or perhaps he was facing challenges that were hidden from your view. Sophie felt the urge to debate, yet she couldn't shake off the echoes of past discussions. Ethan's strained demeanor whenever his phone buzzed. His thoughts on the balance between expectations and freedom. Was there any truth hidden beneath the fabrications? Sophie declared with conviction, It doesn't matter anymore. He has returned to his realm while I remain in my own, precisely where I am meant to be. That evening, while immersed in her term paper, Sophie couldn't help but delve deeper into the unfolding story of Ethan's resignation. The pieces offered scant insight, merely presenting corporate declarations regarding the exploration of alternative avenues and conjecture surrounding familial discord. What Ethan chose to do was no longer her business. Sophie was destined to carve out her unique journey, shaping her own future. With a decisive click, she shut her laptop, resolute in her commitment to concentrate on the aspects of her life within her grasp. Her studies, her career, and the well-being of her mother. As she slipped into slumber, Sophie found herself pondering Ethan's whereabouts that night and whether he ever had her in his thoughts. The campus coffee shop lacked the charm of brewed awakening, yet Sophie craved a fresh environment. With the midterms approaching, she felt the weight of anxiety, knowing she had to avoid any reminders of Ethan at her job. 2 months had slipped by since their clash in the alley, and the whispers had finally started to wane. Sophie? Sophie Gardner. She glanced up from her textbook, her attention drawn to a tall, impeccably dressed man making his way toward her table. There was an unmistakable familiarity in the way he walked with such assurance. "I'm James," he announced, reaching out his hand. "James Whitaker." Sophie tensed at the mention of Ethan, a connection from her business school days. "I have no desire to discuss Ethan." "Just 5 minutes," James insisted, sliding into the seat across from her as if the invitation was unnecessary. "I caught a glimpse of you through the window, and I felt compelled to seize the opportunity to clarify a few matters." Sophie responded with a chill in her voice. "There's nothing to set straight." He was not truthful. "The conclusion has been reached." James observed her intently for a moment. "Have you heard that Ethan was set to step into the CEO role this year?" Since the age of 18, his father had been preparing him for what lay ahead. Against her better judgment, Sophie experienced a spark of intrigue. "What's the matter?" Ethan despised it. Everything. The demands, the entitlement, the manner in which others regarded him as merely a source of wealth. James inclined his body, eager and attentive. "That day he encountered you on that bus?" He had just exited a board meeting, having informed his father that he required some time apart. Sophie's fingers curled more firmly around her coffee cup. "What makes you share this with me?" "It's because Ethan is no longer here," James stated plainly. "He departed from the company, declined his trust fund, and walked away. His whereabouts remain a mystery, even to his own family." The news struck Sophie with an intensity she hadn't anticipated. "Is that really extreme?" James lifted an eyebrow in curiosity. "Or is it precisely what he expressed he desired? Liberty to embrace his true self without the weight of the Carter legacy shaping his identity." Sophie recalled Ethan's words from their conversation at the coffee shop. "What is it that you desire?" he had inquired. "Freedom," he replied when she mirrored the question back to him, "to simply be myself." James persisted, saying, "I'm not suggesting you should overlook his deceit, but perhaps think about the fact that Ethan's connection with you was the truest aspect of his existence, despite the gaps in honesty." Once James departed, Sophie remained still, lost in thought, her textbook left behind. She had been so absorbed in the ways Ethan had misled her that she failed to reflect on what their relationship could have signified for him. That evening, as she strolled home, Sophie came across a newsstand featuring a business magazine. The headline drew her attention. "Carter Hotels confronts uncertainty. Prospects lacking a successor." For the first time since their breakup, Sophie found herself contemplating the possibility that there might be more to Ethan's narrative than she had previously acknowledged. The Pinewood Lodge rested snugly against the mountains, its time-worn wooden signs swaying softly in the wind. There's truly nothing quite like the radiant Carter Grand Hotels, adorned with their sparkling chandeliers and elegant marble floors. This location exuded personality, with its peeling paint, creaky floorboards, and an undeniable charm that felt authentic and irreplaceable. "Oh, you missed a spot," remarked Marcus, the 60-year-old owner, gesturing toward a corner of the reception desk that Ethan was diligently polishing. "Apologies," Ethan responded, applying additional varnish to his cloth. After 3 weeks at the independent hotel, he still found it challenging to follow orders rather than issue them. His cramped quarters in the staff area were about the same dimensions as his old bathroom. The compensation hardly met the basic needs. Yet, In spite of it all, Ethan felt a sense of buoyancy he hadn't experienced in years. "We've got a leak in cabin 7, Marcus declared, setting a toolbox down next to Ethan. "Do you believe you can manage it?" 2 months prior, Ethan would have reached out to maintenance. He nodded with assurance, despite having only a hazy understanding of how to repair a leaking pipe. Later, drenched yet triumphant after his struggle with the plumbing, Ethan settled onto the lodge's back porch, observing as the sunset bathed the mountains in golden hues. His phone, a simple model, far from the latest smartphone he once owned, buzzed with a message from James. "Your father revealed the new CEO today. The stock experienced a decline of 3%. How is life in the mountains?" Ethan offered a faint smile. The decline in stocks would undoubtedly enrage his father, yet it was no longer his concern. At this moment, Carter Hotels held no significance for him. Surprisingly positive, he replied, finally acquiring real skills. One evening, while Ethan was at the reception desk, a young family arrived to check in. Their young daughter gazed in awe at the moose head affixed to the wall. "Is it genuine?" she murmured softly. Ethan bent slightly over the counter. "Between us, I believe it could give a little wink if you observe closely for a while." The young girl let out a soft giggle, prompting her parents to smile with appreciation. A seemingly trivial exchange, yet it brought a deep sense of fulfillment to Ethan. These individuals were indifferent to his surname or financial status. In that moment, he was simply Ethan, the approachable figure behind the front desk. That evening, as moths fluttered around the porch light, Ethan retrieved Sophie's photograph from his wallet. He captured it one afternoon at the park, freezing her mid-laugh as autumn leaves danced around her. At times, he pondered reaching out to her, sharing the details of his new existence, and inquiring about the possibility of rekindling what they once had. But what authority did he possess? Sophie was worthy of someone who had been truthful from the very beginning. Yet, on evenings such as this, with the burden of the Carter legacy finally lifted from him, Ethan permitted himself to envision an alternate conclusion to their tale. A moment in which he mustered the bravery to reveal the truth to her before time ran out. Maybe one day he would earn the opportunity for redemption. At this moment, discovering his authentic self was sufficient. "You ought to go look for him," Lisa suggested, sliding a freshly made latte across the counter to Sophie. 3 months had gone by since Sophie uncovered the reality of Ethan. 3 months spent immersing herself in work and school, attempting to escape the past. Yet the pain lingered, unwavering and relentless. "And express what?" Sophie responded, meticulously cleaning the espresso machine. "Greetings. Do you recall our previous encounters? The girl you deceived for months?" Lisa let out an exasperated sigh. "James informed you of Ethan's whereabouts. Is it a mountain lodge, perhaps? What holds you back?" Sophie had recounted the meeting with James weeks prior, yet she had conveniently omitted the detail of him slipping her a note containing Ethan's location. The Pinewood Lodge, a 6-hour journey by bus to the north. Pride, Sophie finally confessed, and fear. That evening, Sophie found herself seated opposite her mother at their small kitchen table. Maria's health had seen a slight improvement in recent weeks, enabling her to prepare dinner for the first time in months. "He lied to me," Sophie said abruptly, jabbing her fork into her food. "For weeks, perhaps months, and now he simply turns his back on it all as if that alters anything?" Maria observed her daughter intently. "And still, he occupies your thoughts." Sophie let out a deep breath, reclining slightly. "I despise that I exist in this way." She folded her arms across her chest. "However, I must ascertain whether he has truly transformed or if he is merely adopting another facade." Maria acknowledged with a knowing nod. "Then seek the answer." Her mother's demeanor became gentler. "I was curious about when you would come to that conclusion. You were aware. Sophie, you peruse business news websites every day. You haven't really been on many dates since he departed. At times, I catch you whispering his name in your dreams." Maria extended her hand across the table, gently grasping her daughter's. "The inquiry isn't about whether you ought to proceed. That's the reason you haven't left yet." Later that night, Sophie opened her laptop and began searching for bus schedules. The price of the ticket would gnaw at her savings, funds she had been carefully setting aside for next semester's textbooks. Did Ethan justify the gamble? She recalled his expression the final time they met, filled with despair, imploring. And she recalled her own anger, valid yet maybe not entirely whole. Every story has its duality, yet she had confined herself to a singular perspective. Sophie pondered James's words regarding Ethan's departure from all he had ever known, reflecting on his quest for authenticity in a reality constructed on facades. Wasn't that what she desired as well? Genuineness in a realm of facades? Before she had a chance to reconsider, Sophie secured the ticket for Friday, right after her last exam and just ahead of her weekend shift. She had precisely 24 hours to locate Ethan, express her thoughts, and make her way back. What might her words be upon seeing him? Sophie felt uncertain. A part of her yearned to unleash her fury upon him once more for his betrayal. Another part sought to comprehend why he had selected this journey, and a quiet, insistent voice pondered whether they could begin anew, this time free of deception between them. As she shut her laptop, Sophie sensed a feeling she hadn't encountered in months. Anticipation. The Pinewood Lodge appeared just as it did in the images showcased on its website. Quaint, endearing, and a far cry from the opulence associated with the Carter brand. Sophie lingered at the boundary of the gravel parking lot, her petite overnight bag held tightly in one hand, uncertainty washing over her thoughts. What if Ethan chose not to meet her? What if he had moved on? What if this whole journey was a misstep? Just as she was about to have second thoughts, the front door of the lodge burst open. A cheerful family appeared, chuckling as they made their way to their car. Sophie inhaled deeply and stepped ahead. The air in the reception area was infused with the earthy scent of pine and the rich aroma of coffee. A fire danced in the stone hearth, while hiking maps adorned one wall. As she stepped inside, an elderly gentleman with a silver beard raised his gaze from behind the desk. "Welcome to Pinewood," he said with a friendly smile. "Just touching base." Actually, Sophie paused. "I'm searching for someone who is employed here." "Ethan Carter?" The man's demeanor changed, taking on a more defensive air. "Who might you be?" "Sophie Gardner. I am a companion." Just as the man was about to reply, a door behind the desk swung open, revealing Ethan, who entered with a neat stack of freshly laundered towels in his arms. He stood still, caught off guard by her presence, the towels almost slipping from his fingers. "Sophie?" His voice was a mere whisper. She absorbed the view of him. His hair had grown longer, and his face was more tanned than it had been previously. He donned a plain flannel shirt adorned with the lodge's emblem, a stark contrast to the meticulously curated, high-end attire he had sported during their initial encounter. "Hi!" She found herself unexpectedly at a loss for all the words she'd practiced during the bus ride. The elderly gentleman shifted his gaze from one to the other. "Enjoy your break, Ethan. I will take care of the desk." In silence, Ethan guided her to a quaint patio that offered a breathtaking view of the mountains. The afternoon sun draped the landscape in a warm golden hue, stretching long shadows that danced across the ground. "You found me?" Ethan said at last, leaning against the wooden railing. Sophie confessed that James had revealed your location. "I nearly decided not to show up." "I'm pleased you took that step." Ethan's gaze roamed over her features. "What prompted you to do that?" Sophie gazed at the mountains, her mind swirling with reflections. "I had to find out if any of it was genuine." Everything was genuine," Ethan responded instantly. "Aside from the details I chose not to share." A quiet tension lingered in the air, heavy with unasked inquiries. At last, Sophie pivoted to confront him head-on. "If money doesn't define you," she said, "then what does?" Ethan's demeanor relaxed, a faint smile appearing at the edge of his lips. "The person I decide to become." The straightforward response lingered in the atmosphere surrounding them. Sophie came to understand that Ethan had discovered what he had been seeking all this time. Not a way to flee from his identity, but the liberation to shape his own narrative. "And who might that be?" she inquired gently. "The genuine Ethan?" Rather than responding right away, Ethan reached out his hand. Are you interested in discovering more? They perched on a weathered log, gazing at a gentle creek, as the afternoon sun danced through the pine branches above. For the first time, there was an absence of pretense between them. Without the coffee shop counter or concealed identities, it's simply two individuals seeking to reconnect with something genuine. I shouldn't have lied to you, Ethan began, his voice barely rising above the sound of the rushing water. Not even for a moment. Sophie nodded, allowing his words to linger in the air. What prompted you to do that? On that initial day on the bus when you extended your hand, it was the first time anyone had truly recognized me as an individual. Ethan grasped a pine cone, examining it closely as he rotated it in his hands. I felt a deep fear of losing that. Each day I intended to share my thoughts with you, yet each day I found reasons to postpone it just a bit more. Sophie demanded, share every detail with me right now. Only the whole truth from now on. Ethan inhaled deeply and commenced his task. He shared with her the story of his upbringing, living under the weight of his father's legacy, and the burdens of expectation that had followed him since he was a child. He painted a vivid picture of a world steeped in emptiness, where connections were mere transactions, and every act of kindness bore unspoken strings. The moment I encountered you, he went on, I had just informed my father that I required some time apart. I intentionally left my wallet behind. I was curious to discover the outcome of having absolutely nothing. And then I assisted you, Sophie remarked, realization beginning to unfold. You extended a hand to someone you didn't know, without anticipating anything in return. It was the most genuine exchange I had experienced in years. Sophie absorbed Ethan's words as he recounted his path following their split, detailing how he had turned his back on everything, declined his inheritance, and made his way to Pinewood Lodge, armed only with the resolve to create a life defined by his own choices. I earn $9 an hour, plus tips, he remarked, rubbing his weary eyes. Last week, I faced a dilemma. Should I repair my boots or purchase groceries? I reside in a space no larger than a closet, and I still haven't discovered how to rest without being disturbed by every creak of the AG. It wooden walls. Yet, I have never felt more joy. Are you truly never returning? Sophie inquired. To any of that? Ethan locked eyes with her. Uncertainty surrounds my future, yet I am resolute in my decision to never return to a life of deception, be it with my family or with you. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the mountains in hues of orange and pink. Sophie came to the understanding that her bus returning to the city was scheduled to depart in a few hours. The clock was ticking for whatever purpose this gathering was intended to serve. I arrived seeking resolution, she confessed, yet now I'm uncertain about my desires. What fears linger in your mind? Ethan inquired softly. Sophie pondered the question. You've transformed, yet there's still more to do. That we remain from distinct realms. This time frame is insufficient for restoring trust. Ethan nodded in agreement. The time is insufficient. The truth shared between them was a bittersweet blend of agony and liberation. A foundation that was once non-existent, delicate yet tangible. The mountains were cloaked in twilight as Sophie and Ethan strolled back to the lodge. Their exchange had lifted the fog, yet they found themselves in a liminal space, neither united nor entirely separate. Sophie's bus was set to depart in under an hour. I can drive you to the station, Ethan offered as they approached the main building, where warm light spilled from its windows. Thank you, Sophie responded, attempting to push aside the weight in her heart. What had she anticipated from this journey? A storybook conclusion? A tense reunion? Life was far from straightforward. In the cozy kitchen of the lodge, Ethan brewed 2 cups of coffee, a ritual from their history that now carried a sense of both comfort and unease. With a faint smile, he remarked about old habits as he slid a cup toward her. Sophie acquiesced, their fingers grazing each other for a fleeting moment. This coffee is enjoyable, though it doesn't quite match the quality of yours. The straightforward praise lingered in the air, a testament to their beginnings and the journey they had undertaken together. What comes next? Sophie finally posed the question that had been hovering in her mind since her arrival. Ethan rested against the counter, a contemplative look on his face. It all hinges on your desires, Sophie. What do I desire? She was taken aback when he redirected the question to her. Ethan spoke softly. I've made my choice. I embrace truth, even at the cost of losing all that I believed was essential. However, the decision ultimately rests in your hands. Sophie gazed into her coffee, seeking clarity within its dark swirl. It's understandable that trust is in question now. Yet, I'm uncertain about leaving without truly exploring what we could become. The weathered pickup truck outside the lodge stood ready to transport her to the bus station. The clock was ticking away. Perhaps we should begin with something modest, Ethan proposed. Make phone calls and arrange visits whenever possible. Maintaining a long-distance relationship is challenging enough without the added burden of trust issues, Sophie argued. Ethan acknowledged her perspective with a silent nod, choosing not to contest it. This transformed version of him, so patient and humble, ready to embrace challenging truths, was undeniably intriguing and unusual. I should go, Sophie said finally, glancing at the clock. My mother is anticipating my return tomorrow. They approached the truck quietly, a myriad of unexpressed thoughts lingering in the air between them. As Ethan swung the passenger door open for her, Sophie resolved to take a stand. Coffee, she declared out of the blue. Excuse me? Let's begin with a cup of coffee. Sophie locked eyes with him unwaveringly. Next Saturday marks my day of rest. When you arrive in the city, let's meet for coffee at a place that's neither here nor there. There are no guarantees beyond this point. It was not an act of forgiveness. Not at this moment. It was not a relationship. Not any longer. Yet it remained a possibility. A door intentionally left slightly open. Ethan's smile held a blend of caution and hope. I would appreciate that. As they navigated the mountain road leading to the bus station, the trees thickening and shadows deepening, Sophie came to understand that true courage often lay not in retreating or leaping forward. It was just about staying receptive to whatever might unfold next. Sophie smoothed her blazer while making her way through the museum's elegant marble corridor. After 2 years as a curatorial assistant, today she celebrated her inaugural exhibition opening. The east wing of the museum was dedicated to Renaissance women, the overlooked artists of Florence, representing the pinnacle of her graduate thesis work. Feeling anxious, she inquired of her colleague Thomas while adjusting a placard next to a 16th-century portrait. With a sense of dread, Sophie confessed, glancing at her watch. Guests are expected to arrive in 30 minutes. Her phone vibrated with a message from her mother. Absolutely thrilled for you. I'll catch you at 7. Ethan sent the following message. I'm running behind schedule due to traffic. Please set aside a few of those exquisite hors d'oeuvres for me. Sophie beamed, slipping the phone into her pocket. Their journey toward reconnection was anything but simple. That initial coffee meeting blossomed into another, followed by weekend getaways to the lodge. For months, they navigated a delicate balance, neither fully united nor entirely separate. Upon Ethan's eventual return to the city, he had no intention of rejoining Carter Hotels. Instead, he established a modest consulting firm, assisting independent hotels in their battle against luxury chains. Neither of them overlooked the irony. Sophie adjusted a frame, recalling the way Ethan had assisted her in hanging her initial sketches in her small apartment as she worked on her exhibition proposal. He had stood by her during the sting of rejection letters and the joy of eventual acceptance, just as she had been his steadfast ally in reconciling with aspects of his family while preserving his independence. The museum doors swung open at dawn, revealing a well-known silhouette stepping inside. I thought you were caught in traffic, Sophie remarked as Ethan drew near. I may have embellished a bit to catch your attention. He presented her with a delicately wrapped package. On your special occasion. Within lay an exquisite silver bookmark, adorned with intricate engravings reminiscent of the Renaissance era. Ethan explained that it brought back memories of you. Stunning yet functional. Smooth talker, Sophie teased, though her eyes sparkled with emotion. As the guests started to arrive, Sophie paused to watch Ethan engaging in conversation with her colleagues. He navigated the world with a newfound assurance, embracing his identity beyond the confines of his name. Their relationship had its flaws. Occasionally, they found themselves in disputes over finances. Sophie's deep-seated thriftiness at odds with Ethan's sporadic indulgences. Rebuilding trust was a gradual process, marked by challenges and obstacles throughout. In this moment, as she observed the seamless merging of her personal and professional worlds, Sophie experienced a deep sense of alignment. Their narrative had not adhered to any traditional trajectory. There were no thrilling rescues, no heroic sacrifices, just two individuals opting for one another daily, embracing their differences. As the exhibition officially commenced and Sophie moved to deliver her welcoming speech, she noticed Ethan's supportive smile among the audience. At times, the most remarkable adventures start with the most unassuming actions, such as giving a few coins to someone you don't know on a bus. If you're captivated by the romance unfolding between Sophie and Ethan, be sure to like, comment, and share this video with someone who could use a little faith in second chances. Your responses hold great significance for us. Which country are you tuning in from? We invite you to share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to the channel for more narratives that illustrate how simple acts can transform lives. One can never anticipate how a simple act of kindness, like giving spare change to a stranger, could spark an extraordinary journey.